this afternoon, we're going to be doing a piece just on results from the AB-MAC perspective. You heard this morning from the participants, and I wanted to start out by saying that in terms of our goal, it was to prevent errors and denials. And we saw our objective as helping physicians and home health agencies prepare. And you may ask the question, well, prepare for what? Prepare for the future. With all the changes that are coming down the pike and all the challenges of the face-to-face and the upcoming probe and educate reviews, we wanted to make sure everybody at least had an opportunity to work with us towards making the process of the probe and educate a little bit more structured. Obviously, we couldn't work with every single home health agency that we process claims for, but just having the 5 pilots was a step in the right direction, and we'll be able to leverage that information as we go forward. The last bullet seems sort of obvious, but true communication is hard work. For a long time, AB Max and I guess any large organizations, if we publish things on the web or we publish things in bulletins, there was a time where that would be the outcome. We published it, you should know, and go forth and implement it. But we found out that it takes more than just publishing things to help the provider community. So what I got out of this morning and the process was that even though we had varied organizations with varied mix of referral sources, we were able to identify that by using a structured approach, you could control errors and make the process smoother. Another thing we identified was that the physician's role in the home health referral, admission, certification process needed to be better defined. And we actually have launched 2 additional organizational process improvement coaching projects, but these 2 are focused on physicians principally. We're working with one organization that has over 400 physicians in an independent practice, and then another hospital-based education system, so that we'll be able, and we are getting a lot of good information about what actually goes on in the physician's office with, and getting their take on it, and also the hospitalist's take on it additionally. And once we have the 2 pieces and parts, oh, and by the way, when we're doing that with the physicians, we're also asking them, please identify a home health agency with whom you interact that you would like for us to engage. And we've identified two home health agencies along with the 2 physician practices. Well, I hope that over the course of the morning, we were able to bust a couple of myths. And I think Bud alluded to the first one, and that the AB Max job is to deny our claims is not true. That's not true. It may feel that way for those of you who are going ADRs, but it's not true. We're actually in the business of processing claims correctly, and we're actually wanting to be able to, and I'll say this, if we could do away with our whole appeals department, that would be wonderful, right? Or put the RAC out of business, right? That would be wonderful. So as we go forward in creating an environment where we can have an open dialogue about the challenges and the barriers, and then address them collaboratively, I think that it'll go a long way towards busting that first myth that our job is to deny claims. The other myth is that physicians can't learn about home health. I mean, wasn't Dr. Snipes great? I mean, he got up here and he said, look, they're interested. The only thing is that you have to approach them a certain way. And hey, if CEUs are that way, as I said before, count us in. We're on board. Now, in terms of the latter, it's always, the last bullet, it's always a struggle. But what we saw was, even though this myth that, we don't have enough time to meet. This is a big thing. If you were to ask all of the pilots right now, are you better off? Are you glad that you did take the time? And they'll all say yes. And we're glad that they did, because we learned a whole lot as well. It was a two-way street. As we go forward, as we make opportunities for additional organizational process improvement coaching projects available, we would hope that organizations in our jurisdiction take us up on the offer. You think that's a good deal? Yeah. Now, today we talked a lot about communication. And I wanted to focus on communicating two very important concepts. And Dr. Snipes actually used the word natural language. And natural language is a computer science concept where, how we human beings, we'll communicate in sentences, in full sentences. And there's some benefit, but there's also burdens associated with communicating in natural language, in that it's not so precise. But when you're dealing with computers, and you have to be very exact in order for the computer to process the data and create information that's useful, that forces you to define things. So what we wanted to do is say, well, how can we structure this concept? How can we help communicate the concept of confined to the home and skilled need along the entire continuum, all the way from the frontline folks to the clinicians and even to the finance folks, so that they understand the concepts. And one of the ways that we're doing that, and I mentioned before that sometimes machines can get in the way. What we're looking to do is to look at how can we use the 4 questions that Dr. Snipes mentioned and others have mentioned. How can we use the 4 questions to engage the provider community, both physicians, nurses, therapists, and non-clinicians, in understanding that these are the elements that should be in the record in order to communicate why this individual requires the skills of a nurse or a therapist, or why they are, quote unquote, confined to the home. And what we did in November, and I remember this very distinctly because it was the first week after we went to Carolinas, and we put a video on the web, and we got the idea. Well, I got the idea from my son, who's a computer science. He's a software engineer, and he says, "Hey, Dad, have you checked out a Big Think? It's a website that has many short videos, and they communicate very interesting concepts in a very short amount of time." So together with our provider outreach and education area, we explored this ability to communicate in 4-minute or 5-minute blocks, and that's what led to the development of this video. And since you're going to receive electronic slides, you're able to link to this and watch the 4-minute video. And I believe that Dr. Snipes has used the video as part of the training of physicians as well. So we did that. We used a blog post, the Going Beyond Diagnosis blog, and the video. But as Bud pointed out also, we began tweeting and using Twitter and social media to communicate. One of the things that we have started, and hopefully this will blossom as we go forward, is to use a hashtag. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the hashtag is just a # in front of a string. And we created the hashtag Medicare HISC. HISC stands for Health Information Supply Chain, as a way to, on the web, organize information around what we're doing today and what we've discussed today, the Medicare Health Information Supply Chain. So even if you're not on Twitter, if you put Medicare HISC into your browser, you'll see information having to do with Palmetto GABA's initiative, the Health Information Supply Chain Initiative. Now here you'll see 2 distinct messages. One is to the physicians, and it says the physician home health face-to-face encounter, there are no magic words, but there are critical concepts. And if you link on this link, it takes you to a blog post that has to do with 16 domains, 16 classes of information that if you're dealing with musculoskeletal problems, you would want to consider including in your documentation. So that's one way to make it computable, to identify what are the domains, what are the classes of information that you want to be part of your documentation. The second tweet here is just also geared to engaging the rehabilitation side of things. And we have a really good idea that after you've had a joint replacement, you're going to need therapy. You're going to need rehabilitation. The question really is, how do you communicate that in the electronic health record? How do you communicate the concepts of confined to the home and skilled need? And as we pointed out, we're not only tweeting to the home health and physicians, but we're also tweeting to hospitals and hospitalists. So we have some posts. This particular one on top was an advertisement for this event today. Then you see on the bottom, you see post-acute care partners must communicate effectively for successful total joint surgeries. We took the opportunity that CMS just put out that proposed rule. I know many of you have seen it for the comprehensive care for joint replacement. It's a proposed rule that seeks to bundle the care, 90-day bundle, and they're taking comments on it now, so I hope that those of you who are interested access that link and do comment on it. Now, here is something that I learned during this month, and that is that CMS has formally adopted Lean as its process improvement approach. And this is actually a tweet, a posting put on the web by CMS saying that just that fact. And if you click on that link, you'll see the following. You'll see some of the following, and that is some takeaways from their having gone through this process of learning about Lean. And the first one is aligned to one process improvement methodology and common tool set. What that allows you to do is to gain expertise in using a specific set to make that expertise standard across the entire enterprise. And now that we have our main customer, right, because we all share CMS as a customer, saying this is the way that we as an organization are going forward is to use Lean. And what are they using Lean for? As the second bullet says, they are transforming the culture in order to develop a community of problem solvers and achieve enhanced results. In this room today, there are problem solvers. And going forward, it will be imperative that we take on that challenge and work collaboratively to solve the problems that we identify. Now, this bullet here, this is a long-term journey. What we're doing today and what the pilots have done over the last 6 months is a first step. And as we work continuously to improve, as we expand the impact of this initial pilot, we'll see this grow over time. You heard many of the pilots say we have some hundreds of initiatives that we've prioritized and will eventually get down the list, but it's going to take us a while to get there. And that's exactly what this approach allows you to do, is to prioritize improvements and then take them on step by step. So Lean helped CMS to standardize their work, build stronger relationships, and empower staff to make changes. That sounds pretty good to me. And if the payer, the ultimate payer, CMS, is saying that they're utilizing Lean, then that's a tip of the hat to those organizations that have already implemented or are thinking about implementing Lean and Six Sigma. So I just want to close by asking the question, and this is by the way, this is an approach that I've used with physicians because, as Dr. Snipes put it, that value equation isn't in the physician's frame of reference And so, I asked the question, how do we create value? Well, value is an equation. It's quality divided by cost. And you can increase value by increasing quality, decreasing costs, or, hey, how about doing both? How about increasing quality and decreasing costs? Then you're really maximizing value. And so that's the challenge that we're going to have going forward. Because as most of you know, in addition to putting out the comprehensive care for joint replacement proposed rule, CMS also put out a proposed rule for home health value-based purchasing. And in that rule, CMS spells out that not only do they expect to improve beneficiary experience and outcomes, but they also expect that by incentivizing quality improvement, that organizations will then take heed and begin to work towards that. And the really telling thing about this whole approach is that it utilizes both the numerator and denominator of value, because they're looking for increased clinical quality, but they're also looking for efficiency and encouraging efficiency. At the bottom of this slide is a link to the proposed rule, and they're taking comments. I would expect that many of you will be commenting on this proposed rule. So what does the proposed rule state in a nutshell? I think it's a very in-depth rule, but the message is that there are going to be certain Medicare certified home health agencies that are going to be really competing against one another in whatever states are selected. They've tentatively selected 9 states, but they're leaving open for the opportunity that if someone could come up with a better idea, and they've stated that in the proposed rule, for selecting which home health agencies participate in the value-based purchasing, that they're open to that. But right now, there are 9 states that are on slate, and we have 3 of them. It's Florida, North Carolina, and Tennessee. So what does that mean, being that they have to be competitive? Well, CMS is looking at this and saying, not only are they going to judge value based on your current quality, but also on your history. How much have you improved over time? So there's 2 very important aspects to this. Not only that you're providing quality care now, but that you're getting better over time. So, and that's where it becomes very important to truly understand your value stream. And I think Kathy, Annette, and the pilot presenters spoke to this. Understanding what are the steps that are not value added, because if you're spending an hour and a half faxing when that adds no value whatsoever, then you have to rethink that process and remove that and put something more effective in place. So mapping the process flows helped the pilots and helped Palmetto GBA identify barriers, develop good ideas, implement prioritized process improvements, and then improve operational performance and improve operational efficiency. And I'm going to say this because I think it needs to be said that when we talk about value-based purchasing, and you have the idea, well, whatever it is that CMS is going to pay, that's what they're going to pay. But you really do have to take into account, what are my operational costs? Because if I'm competing with a home health agency down the road that's getting paid more than I am for the same care, right, then in order to stay competitive, my costs have to be lower than theirs are. Does it make sense? So you have to understand that you do have, value-based purchasing is not a spectator sport, right? Because you have control over your operating costs. And by going through this process of value stream mapping and removing the waste, you're able to lower your cost and be more competitive, even in a value-based payment system. So this is, we call it the voice of the customer. This is CMS talking, and And they put out a press release at the beginning of the year, and they said that all alternative payment models and payment reforms that seek to deliver better care at a lower cost share a common pathway for success. That is, providers must make fundamental changes in their day-to-day operations that improve the quality and reduce the cost of healthcare. And I'll take them at their word for that they're looking for improved quality and decrease in operational costs and therefore expenditures by CMS. This is a picture of the good ideas that were put up on the board, and I'm going to ask you to think of all the good ideas that you had while you heard the providers this morning, the pilots speaking about it, and ask you, in your organizations, what does your future state look like? Is it this clean? Because if it's not this clean, then we need to start working towards that. And I want to say thank you very much to all of you who took the time to attend, and we're going to begin the panel discussion at this point, if there are no questions.